I want to take up too much time going over the Bible studies. So real quick, I'm just going to take some time. For those that don't know, I had mentioned that I was going to bring some Bible study guides in for people to kind of like get a little bit of a view of. And again, these are all interesting. These are all specifically Bible study guides. This is like the material that I use to prepare for any type of Bible study that I'm going to do. So this Bible study guide right here is called Truth Link. I had mentioned this one before, and these ones I actually used when I was at Southwestern Adventist University. I use it is written as well, but I use these a lot because this is where I got the Truth Link Bible studies from, was from Southwestern, and these are really nice because a lot of their studies are based off of they're really founded in love. And so it kind of helps you to be drawn toward, in your studies, gearing towards more love of a focus. And it's really good to be able to have that perspective because sometimes Bible study guides jump straight to the point. And so having a little something that kind of touches on love and gives you some verses and some direction where you can go, like centering the study on love, is definitely a good option. And just in case some of you guys are interested, these are connected with the Arise program. There's a Rise program, David Ashrick. If any of that makes any clicking in your head, then yeah, these are connected with those. I actually Ashrick. I don't even know how to spell his name.
Ascherick. Ascherick. It may be two S, but I think it's just one.
Yeah.
And what are they called? Arise?
Arise.
Arise. Program.
Yeah, it's a Rise program.
Never heard of it.
It stands for, I forget all the letters, but it basically, let's go preach the word.
Oh, for real? I didn't even know that was acronym for something.
There was a lady who helped do the Bible studies for David Ashrick, who ran a health food store in southern Oklahoma. She still does there in Ardmore. Her name is Mary Byrne, and she started a little program to train people. And it talks about Isaiah, arise and shine. So she named her program Shine, and she took students of health. I forget she had,
Yeah. No, that's cool. Well, yeah. So this is kind of like centered with them. These studies are some of my favorite personally. These studies right here. I never really take them into a Bible study, but
What are they called?
they don't actually have. So a guy who does evangelistic series, who has done them in the past, he made his own Bible study guides that people can follow along. So I think it started off with like a fill-out sheet that he gave people as he did evangelistic series. And then as he got more and more detailed with the sheets, he decided to make it look a little more creative. And so he ended up coming up with these. And so this is his own personal Bible study guide. And so I brought this so that you see, like, sometimes people make their own Bible study guides.
And what's that?
His name is...
Is it down on the bottom?
No, I don't see his name on this. His name haunts me. I forgot. That's horrible. It's like, this is my favorite. But he came out of the evangelistic series, and I collected every single one of these because I was like, I want to keep these for life, because he's always revamping his Bible studies and always going deeper into them and always adding something to it. So this thing is a project still growing, and I'm glad I caught it at this phase. So this is another set of Bible study guides. This is a set of Bible study guides that was actually given to us theology majors when we started doing our evangelistic series. And there was another set of Bible studies that was given to us, but I can't seem to find it. That's like my box of Bible studies. Like, I keep all my Bible study stuff in there. There's still some more tools in there. But this one I actually went through it a couple times preparing for an evangelistic series. I haven't really done any Bible studies off of it, but it's still good information to have. And real quick, just so that you kind of get a little picture, like this one kind of centers it around love. Oh, this one kind of centers. This evangelistic series is called Revelation of Love. So he also has a foundation in love. This one says the revelation of Jesus. So a lot of this Bible study will be centered around Jesus and verses containing Jesus in it. This one is connected to amazing facts and the Bachelor. But what I like about this is it's actually a video presentation that you go through with a bunch of different has presentations, it has Bible topics, it has just a bunch of stuff. And this isn't necessarily like a Bible study that you would walk through somebody with, but this is nice to be able to get some information from and to grow and learn on a topic.
Those are DVDs?
Yeah, they're DVDs, but yeah, it's like more like software. You put it into a computer and it'll show you all the different things you can click on and work through. So the thing I like about these, and like you could order something like this from their office for like $10. Like it's not, these aren't expensive. It might be less than $10. But what's cool about these is Prophecy Foundations, a multimedia Bible experience. And so basically what's really cool with these is, say that you've gone through some Bible studies with somebody, but you notice every time you come across this Bible study, a certain portion of Bible study, let's say Second Coming, I always seem to struggle when it comes to doing that Bible study. I don't feel confident. Maybe I don't know that doctrine that well. Diving into some material like this to just be able to like learn a little bit more about how people get that Bible study, conversations that come up, rebuttals that people have when it comes to, that topic. Studying something like this will help you to get your feet kind of like more set in that doctrine or in that Bible study so that you know how to present it a lot better. These are the wonderful and the well-known amazing facts Bible study guides. These are a lot. These are a lot of Bible studies. It's 27 Bible studies. So it's definitely a roller coaster, but definitely it's very informational. So like you definitely get a lot from these. And I love these studies. I'll definitely go through Amazing Facts Bible studies before an evangelistic series just to refresh my mind. Sometimes before a Bible study that I'm going to do with somebody who's non-SDA or who knows nothing about SDA. That's probably the better. Like if they don't know anything about SDA, I'll go through some of these because they just share a bunch of facts around, the topic that you're studying around. Amazing Facts. It kind of gets its name from the fact that it is written. I just really like their layout and I like their simple format. I like this set because you can really build off of it very much so. Some sets, like they're really geared towards, this agenda of like pushing love, pushing Jesus, pushing this. And that may sound, nice, but if you start off with it, sometimes it's like, you got to go gung-ho with it all the way through versus something like this, where it starts off kind of like at a good point where you can maybe add some of this stuff to start off and then kind of go into this and then end a certain way that you want. So I really like these because it's simple. And then this right here is a DVD set of an evangelistic series that I really like. And he has his stuff on YouTube. So I haven't actually really opened this. I was thinking about giving it to somebody. It's the Revelation of Love Bible Prophecy Seminar. David Machado, that's his name. That's the guy. Yeah. David Machado. He's good stuff.
Machado.
Wait,
Yes.
Machado?
Yes.
Thank you.
And so he definitely like this stuff. This was probably the greatest evangelistic series that I've ever listened to personally. The greatest. All right, hands down.
What's the title?
It's the Revelation of Love. And so these are some options that you have when it comes to Bible studies. Just some stuff that you can dive into, read about.
Do those CDs match those paper?
Yeah, the CDs match those. And so that's probably another reason why I probably haven't opened this, but those study guides are just amazing because they got it verse by verse, step by step, all the way through.
Are those available or are they just some you collected?
It's something I collected at his evangelistic series, but this DVD series is available, and I believe he if you buy this, that some of these will come included, so that you'll have. They might just be PDF or online, so you may not be able to have like.
But you could print them out.
But you can print them out yourself and use them.
Is it
So
a DVD set or a CD set?
this is a DVD set. So it's he recorded some messages, put it on, and easy to go. So yeah, so that's some Bible study options. There's more Bible studies like this is just like a collection that I have. But you could have Discover Bible Studies. That's an option. There's other people who have created their own Bible study guides. I'd definitely be careful as to like who you invest in when it comes to those Bible study guides, because going definitely with someone who's a little bit more well known, somebody who's a little bit more published in the aspect of Bible study guides helps in just the reliability of it and authority behind it, because sometimes if you go down some scary offshoots, it may be hard for people to chew on, right? Like you want to make sure that there's incremental growth and that everything is step by step, and you're not hitting somebody with something that they're not ready to understand or see yet. So, with all that being said, we can start off with a word of prayer, and then we can dive in. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I just want to thank you for this time, this opportunity that we have to be able to dive into your word, and to be able to dive into just the topic of questions, rejections, and follow-ups. And I pray that as we journey through, Lord, that you may guide us and lead us so that we can be best representatives of you. We can be best Bible workers for you in every aspect of our life, whether we're giving a study to one of our family or loved ones, or whether we're giving a study to someone we don't know. Lord God, join us, fill us with encouragement and hope, as I pray in Jesus' precious name. Amen. So something that I thought would be cool to be able to go over real quick before we dive into the sheet here is turn with me in your Bibles to Matthew chapter 10, verses 14. Matthew chapter 10, verses 14. So Jesus is sending out the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles. He's sending them out, and he comes to verse 14, and I love this verse because I think it's something that we need to kind of keep in the back of our minds. And it's, whoever will not receive you nor hear your words, when you depart from that house or city, shake off the dust from your feet. Assuredly, I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in that day of judgment than for that city. One of the things that we have to come to just accept, and that's okay, is that people can make their own decisions. People can reject stuff. And when we're thinking about people rejecting stuff, we can think about it in different ways. One, rejection is normal, right? Like it's not anything against us. It's not anything about who we are or what we've done, right? Rejection is normal. It's going to happen. Jesus said it's going to happen. As a matter of fact, if you look in Luke chapter 4, Jesus was rejected by a whole city, right? His own people rejected him. And so if Jesus got rejected, like what makes us better? If they rejected Jesus, how much more are they gonna reject us? And so I just wanted us to have that kind of like background thought as we're going through this, because sometimes we have this idea that like, look, when I start doing Bible studies, I don't want a single person to reject me, not one. And it's all like, okay, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? And disappointment, right? Rejection is natural. Rejection happens. Sometimes when somebody rejects, it's not because they don't like you or they don't like the study. Sometimes it's just things that they're dealing with on the inside. And so when Jesus is saying this to the disciples, it's an encouragement, right? He's encouraging them. He's like, hey, look, don't worry about it. It's not about going out there and trying to get everybody to say yes. It's about weeding out all the people and trying to find those that want to do it, that will say yes, right? It's about finding that person. And so rejection will come, but it's about finding that person. So when it comes to questions, rejections, follow-up, I thought the best place to start is questions. A lot of times people have this idea built up in their mind that questions automatically mean rejection, right? You're going through a study, and the study could be second coming, right? You're coming to the point of second coming, and you're talking about Jesus, right? And how he's coming back in the cloud. It's going to be loud. It's going to be visible. You're saying all these words, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, I thought there was going to be something different, right? Like straight up, they'll just start. Like they may just say, like, I thought it was going to be something different, and immediately in our head we're like, oh my goodness, they're rejecting what I'm saying because they had this question or this thought came up in their minds, and they're rejecting what I'm saying. But I want to encourage us that questions don't automatically mean rejection. Questions actually mean curiosity. Like, I would rather go into a Bible study where somebody's like asking a bunch of questions and they're confused and they're trying to like figure this out than go into a Bible study where somebody's just sitting there like, yeah, I understand. Right? Because when somebody's asking questions, there's this level of interest, right, that is involved in it. Going back to the example from yesterday, the hymnal. No, again, just keep using the hymnal as an example, right? But if I'm showing somebody something and I'm going through it and I'm like, hey, look, check this out. This has this, this has that. It's like, wait, what do you mean? Oh, so you can do this, this, and that? But what about this? Does the hymnal help with this situation? Does the hymnal help with that situation? Can I get 2 or 3? When somebody's asking questions, it shows that they have a high level of interest in whatever's going on.
Like
and so,
would this be like Nicodemus visiting Jesus?
Like Nicodemus visiting Jesus, right? He's visiting Jesus in the night, and he got these questions, and it's because he has this high level of interest. He's trying to figure this out. And Jesus, even in that situation, he knows that. So what does Jesus do? He entertains it. He continues to ask him questions. He begins to answer some questions. He begins to walk and talk with him through the process. And what's awesome is when Nicodemus left that scene, or when Jesus left that scene, or when they left that scene, it's almost like, wait, they didn't even, nothing was resolved, right? Nicodemus didn't, agree 100% to the Bible study. He didn't fall full in, right? But it was a process and it took time. And see, I could dive into that because Nicodemus, that's my story, man. When you continue to follow that man throughout time. But throughout time, eventually he did come around. Eventually he did end up giving in. So I want us to be encouraged that when somebody's asking questions, we can be excited about that because we're like, oh, this person is actually interested. And so let's dive into what's going on here. So when somebody does ask a question, what can you say? Right? There's different things that you can say. One thing that I want to encourage you not to say, and mind you, you can say this if you want to. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't say it. I don't want anybody leaving here saying like, Pastor Josie, yeah, I said it in the Bible study. I knew I shouldn't have said it. But saying that's a good question. Like when somebody like say somebody's all like, if Jesus comes back, if Jesus comes back and it's audible,
Do not say that's a good question.
Don't say that. That's a good question.
Don't
say that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because in the society that we live in today, for some odd reason, when somebody says, "Oh, that's a good question," it almost implies this whole thing in the background of this person doesn't know anything. There's this implication behind it. I don't know why it exists. I wish I could go back into the history of time and figure it all out. But when you're doing a Bible study with somebody and they come up and they ask you, they say a question on the study that's like, wait, so how does this connect with this? I thought this, what does this word mean? Or I heard that this is that. Is that true? Simply saying that's a good question automatically implies this whole, oh, that's a good question.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
I think it would imply it's a common question. Other people have had that question.
But it does imply uncertainty.
Yeah, it implies a
People
level of
say
uncertainty. So what I would say instead that actually has a lot more positivity behind it and a lot more excitement and a lot more like, oh, this person, it was a good question without saying it was a good question, is I love that question. When you say something like, oh, that's a good question, it's like, give me a minute to think about it. When you said, oh man, I love that question, all of a sudden it's all like, oh, you do? Like it was a good question? Like you love it? right? There's almost this positivity that's filled, in their head. It's like, oh, I asked a good question. That's awesome. Or, I read the Bible all the time myself, and I always run across questions. If you read the Bible a lot, you run a lot across questions. I do myself. So simply saying like, when I read the Bible all the time, I run across questions myself. Like just being able to open the door to say, I'm inviting questions. I don't mind questions. Questions are awesome. Questions are cool. I love it. Just being positive. Questions are what make the Bible amazing. The important thing is the first thing you say will, evoke in them an emotion, right? It's going to bring an emotion in them. So when you say, I love that question, it's like, oh, this positive emotion tends to fill them. Or if you say, hey, I read the Bible all the time and I always run across questions just like that, right? It's like this, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. There's more people that have questions about the Bible. Or, like questions are what make the Bible amazing. Could you imagine if we knew everything, right? The Bible knew all the answers. Like there would be no growth. There would be no developing, right? And so as soon as you say that, or as soon as the person asks a question, I would say something that's positive, something that's affirming. I love that question. That's awesome. I love that you said that. I love that you pointed that out. I love that you were able to catch that. Just saying simple things of, I like that, I love that, that's good, versus saying, oh, that's a good question. It just, all of a sudden, it's just, I don't know if it's the society or what, it just builds a bunch of uncertainty behind it. So after stating something, right? So after stating a phrase, whether it's like, oh, I love that you brought that out, or I love that you said that. After you state that, one of the things you could do is if you know the answer, simply just share it, right? Sometimes you'll sit in a Bible study and somebody will ask a question and you'll know the answer. And it's I'll tell you right now, it's an awesome feeling. Maybe you went over the Bible study earlier yourself and you ran across that question. And then you looked something up and you found the answer. It's like, oh, this level of satisfaction when that person asks, right? It's like, oh, I love that you asked that question, right? And you could even add in, I actually ran across that question myself too, right? Just letting them know, like, hey, I saw what you saw too. And
I had the same question.
I had the same exact question, like, and then this is what I found, right? Simply share it. And when you share it, don't be shy, don't be nervous, right? It's kind of in the same context when it comes to appeals. When it comes to appeals or, making a decision, you want to be confident. And you just want to be sure when you're coming to that final, appeal. In the same way, when you're answering a question, you just want to be confident. You want to be sure to say like, hey, like I ran across that question myself and I found this, and it may satisfy them and they may be like, oh man, like that was amazing. But if you come to realize that either they didn't get satisfied by the answer, or if you come to realize that you don't know the answer to the question, there's some options that you have moving forward. So underneath B, you'll see that you just offered to study it over the week and come together the next week to study it. The truth of the matter is, and this is why it's really nice to have a physical one of these. Being able to have a physical Bible study, they understand that there's a time crunch. And people will always understand that there's a time crunch. They'll understand like, hey, we got to get through this Bible study. You don't have to say that, right? You don't have to say like, hey, we kind of have to get through the Bible study. You can't answer this question right now. Everybody kind of knows, like when you do a study with somebody, we're going through the study, right? So when a question that comes up that you don't know the answer, or you try to get the answer and you thought it was sufficient, but they're like, oh, that makes sense. But what about this case? And so it's all like, oh man, I love that you pointed out this. I didn't even notice that, right? And so you notice that it continues on. Now you can present the idea of saying, hey, what if we did this? What if we study it over the week, and the next time when we meet, we spend about 10, 15 minutes just talking about what we came to find. When you do that, that just opens a relief for them and a door for them to study more and to see how interested they are in it. Because for some people, they might, oh, it's not that serious. And people will say that, right? People will be like, oh, it's not that serious. We don't have, it's not like anything that deep. But some people may be really excited about that. Oh, really? Like we could take like a little portion of time and study. It's like, yeah, we can take like 10 to 15 minutes and just talk about what we came to find. And if you do have the number and they have yours, which I imagine that you do, but being able to connect throughout the week, you can connect with me, send some verses that you run across and some passages that you run across, and we'll just stay connected. but utilize the questions that pop up that you don't know the answer to as an opportunity to build relationship, not as an opportunity to build distance, right? Like you could distance yourself to be like, I don't really know the answer, and just be like awkward, just sitting there. Or you could use it and say like, hey, let's study this thing out together. Like, like we can come together next week and then we can hash it all out. And I would only reserve 15 minutes in the beginning of the next week to study it. I wouldn't dive too deep into it unless you know it's a topic that's coming up in the future. We already kind of talked about that. I'm just simply saying like, oh, you're gonna love that lesson when we come to it, because we're actually gonna talk about that, right? There's a lot of times I've had people who I was doing study with them, and they're like, so what about the state of the dead? I just need to know and understand. And I'm just like, look, that's gonna come up in like 2-3 lessons. Like we're gonna relax. I'm excited that you're excited. It makes me happy to see how interested you are in it. But just stick with us. We're gonna get there. It's gonna be fun. Just being positive and telling them like, hey, we're gonna get there. But if you're gonna do it the 15 minutes, if you're gonna do a study with them for the next week over maybe a word, or maybe over a sentence that was said in the Bible, or maybe a verse that they thought, contradicted what that verse was saying. If you're going to do a study with it next week, I would advise 15 minutes. Don't take up a whole, I would encourage you not to take up a whole Bible study session to go over a word or to go over, a sentence or something. I would take 15 minutes, do as much research as you can beforehand, and just go in there with the 15 minutes, have that conversation, and then jump into the Bible study. And so, where can you find some answers? This is a good one. Where can you find some answers? A couple places you can find some answers is, this is a C, under 2.
Okay.
So a few places you can find some answers is going to family. I suggest greatly starting there. When I say going to family, I'm talking about there's somebody in your family who may be a spiritual leader, right? Maybe a spiritual individual. They've done maybe some studies before, maybe not Bible studies, but they've done some studies or some studying before. Take the question to them and ask them. Say like, hey, I have this Bible study that I'm doing, and one of them, or this individual I'm doing Bible study with, they asked me this question. What are your thoughts on that? And just talk with them about that. Because if it can end in your family, and when I say end, I'm saying the answer can be found in your family or your friends. If your answer can be found in there, that is beautiful and that's perfect. And this is the reason why, and I'm encouraging you, this is the reason why. When you go into the Bible study the next week and you bring up, the study, you can easily say, I was actually looking at this with my husband. I was actually looking at this with my wife. I was actually looking at this with my best friend. I was actually looking at this with a close friend of mine. And watch, you'll easily find they will ask, like, oh, are they a pastor? And they'd be like, no, just a friend of mine. And that is so, when I say it's encouraging for them to just be able to see like, oh, other people are studying the Bible. Other people are asking these questions. Like it's not just running to a pastor, just running to, Google or searching stuff up. Like, no, like we just studying this stuff. We're just looking this stuff up in the Bible and seeing what the Bible says. So I encourage you, find a family, find a friend, find someone that's close. I'm not saying you can't come with the best, and we don't get there. But after kind of wrestling with it with family members, with friends, take time and ask church leaders. Any church leader that you see in the church. Ask a church leader and get their thoughts, get their opinions, get what they think about the text. Maybe even study the text with them. Send it to them through a text message. But shooting out to a church leader, they could be in a board position, they could be one of the elders, one of the deacons, deaconesses. But reaching out and being able to connect with them is good, because when you go back, they'll ask, was it a pastor? It's like, oh, right. And it's important for that, because a lot of times what happens is you go and it's like, oh, was it a pastor? It's like, yeah, it was my pastor. I talked to my pastor. My pastor told me. And what you're teaching them is, if they have questions, go to their pastor, right? And we're doing our best to stay within a community mindset of studying the Bible, right? We want them to be able to go to another person, study the Bible, Go to this person, study the Bible. And yeah, go to the pastor, study the Bible too. But it's really building a foundation and mindset of pastors aren't the only ones that study the Bible. Like it's not, right? Like this is a church that studies the Bible. This is a family that studies the Bible. This is a group of people who study the Bible, right? And then after that, ask your pastor, right? Like ask your pastor. And again, I'm not trying to say like I don't want questions. I hope that doesn't get across. Like the pastor doesn't want any questions. It's just my biggest desire, my biggest hope is for people to be able to see, especially when they're coming into church, like people study the Bible. I was studying with a friend. I was studying with my spouse. I was studying with my parents. I was studying with my grandchild. Right? I was studying with these individuals, and so like, oh, like were they pastor? Like, no, just average Joes. We just studying the Bible because that's what we do. And the last one I put on here.
Well, I was just gonna say, our church has a little library up front, which has the SDA encyclopedia set up there, which for the Bible. So before or after church, you can go in there.
Oh yeah.
And pull out the encyclopedia for that verse.
Oh yeah, very easily. Yes. There's resources like you mentioned all over the church. There's resources online, and that's why the next one I was gonna say you can Google it. Simply just saying online. Just looking stuff up online is beautiful. It's key, but you just got to be careful because you can also find a bunch of crazy stuff online too. So I don't encourage people to Google stuff. But if we all struggling to find the answer, most likely I'll probably reach out to my mentors. I'll probably reach out to some of to some of my peeps on that end before I go to Google. But if you dying to look for answers,
if you Google it is written.
If you Google it is written.
They have something called Bible Answers, and I was trying to look for it and I couldn't find it, but it is written has very good online resources for
I can imagine
people answer questions.
So you can write down "it is written" as options. Googling "it is written." But yeah, so when it comes to questions just within the Bible study, the biggest thing I just hope that we get from the questions is using it as an opportunity to build the relationship. Questions are awesome. Questions show curiosity. Questions show concern. They show that they're interested, right? And so when they're asking questions, you can utilize that and say like, okay, they're asking questions. Like we're progressing somewhere. We're getting somewhere. We can grow in this. Maybe, the person will study it throughout the week. And again, just simply texting them throughout the week and reaching out to them throughout the week and sending them stuff throughout the week. Like, hey, that was a good question that you asked. This is some stuff I've been finding. Check this verse out. Check that verse out, right? You're building a relationship from the questions that come up in the Bible study. And the beautiful part is, especially when you stick to that 15-minute time frame of studying or 10 to 15-minute time frame of studying before the study, you're still getting through the Bible studies. You're still working through all of them. And so it's always well. Now, in the context of dealing with rejections. So when it comes to dealing with rejections, rarely, I don't think I've ever had a time for myself, but rarely will you run across somebody that will straight up say no. Because this is the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is the person agreed to Bible studies. They're sitting down with you, studying the Bible, right? And so if they're sitting down and they're studying the Bible with you, and then you come across stuff and you give that, appeal, or you bring them to that decision, they're never going to just look at that decision, let me not say never, but rarely would they ever look at it. I've never had it happen to me where somebody just looked at it and said, no, I'm good. Rarely. Usually what you get is, I would, but. That's usually what you run across, right?
Would you give an example?
So for example, you come to
The Sabbath.
we come to the Sabbath, right? Would you like to honor the Sabbath, or would you like to honor the Sabbath or honor your relationship with Jesus by keeping the 7-day Sabbath and strengthening your relationship with Him? Rarely would you ever run across somebody that would straight up say no. and a discussion. Like no one's ever gonna come to the point and say straight up like, no, I don't want to do it. And period. I mean, you just feel the awkwardness in the room, right? Nobody wants to take on that much awkwardness, right? No one's strong enough to take on that much awkwardness. What you would get is somebody would say like, I would, but, and then they go into an explanation. So all of a sudden our rejections are no longer just this idea of straight up no. If you ever do a Bible study and you get a straight up no, I want to know. Because you're going to be the first person I ever ran across that has ever experienced a hard rejection no. And even in the training you're doing, like they straight up say, no one usually says no. Like no one usually says straight up no. They usually say, I would, but my family. I would, but my job. I would, but my circumstances. I would, but maybe next year. Because it's going to be a little bit easier next year, right? So you run into all of these different reasonings behind it. So rarely does anybody ever just straight up say no, right? And I put here usually the rejection doesn't mean that they don't want to do the Bible studies anymore either. Because sometimes people will be like, if somebody says no, I would do it, but and they get their explanation. And so all of a sudden, sometimes we get this like little like fear in us that makes us feel like, oh, so do they not want to do the Bible studies anymore? Because they just said they don't want to do it. And so like I'm here to tell you, it does not mean they don't want to do Bible studies anymore. It means for that specific part, they want to do it. There's a desire in them to do it, but these are the things that's preventing them from doing it, right? And so that's usually what the situation that you'll find. You're not breaking up, right? Sometimes it's like somebody proposes and it's like, oh, they said no. It's like, it's not that situation at all. There's no comparison, right? This is completely somebody who has this reasoning, still want to continue forward with the Bible studies, still want to continue forward with what's going on, but these are the things that are stopping them. So how can you work through all of that? Because if they are coming up with this reasoning behind, that's the situations you're going to find most likely. They are coming up with that. How do you work through it? How do you work around it? What do you do when situations like that happens? The first thing that you want to do is to listen carefully to what the rejection is. Listen carefully to what the rejection is. And when I say listen carefully, make sure that you're paying attention to exactly what they're saying the situation is. Because a lot of times when somebody has a rejection, it falls in the category of wanting to know a little bit more about the information. You may run across this when it comes to the state of the dead. When it comes to the state of the dead, usually a lot of people want to do some research on their own. They want to look some stuff up because that one hits home a lot for people who have not understood that before. The Sabbath, a lot of people are like, okay, but when it comes to state of the dead, it's like, this is a dramatic shift of mind. Like, I used to think my aunt was in heaven and my uncle was in hell, and now you're telling me they sleep. So for them, they just want to study it all a little bit more. They want to wrestle with it a little bit more. So listen carefully to the rejection. The rejection be like, I don't think I'm ready to accept that. I just need to know a little bit more. I need to figure stuff out a little bit more. And so the first step is just by listening carefully to what the rejection is. What are they saying? Are they saying they don't want to do it because of a job? Are they saying they don't want to do it because they need to learn a little bit more? Are they saying they don't want to do it because they're really upset at their grandfather for what they did and they really want that person to be burning in hell? So what exactly is it that they're fighting with? Make sure you pinpoint that exactly in your mind. And then number two, show that you understand the question or the rejection by restating. Restating has a lot of power to it. When you restate to somebody, what they said, they get to hear for themselves as well.
For clarification.
Right? They get clarification. And sometimes what you will find that's interesting, or what I found to be interesting, is sometimes you'll clarify. For example, state of the dead, right? somebody be like, I just feel like I just need to take some time to do a little bit more studying because, I'm trying to understand all this. And they may say something like that. Simply by restating and saying, so just so I get this right, you just want to take time to understand the topic a little bit more clear, and then this is something that you'll be able, and then this will be something that you'll be able to take on, and that you'll find this happen. Ready? You'll find it happen that they'll say, no, not exactly. And then in your head, you'd be so frustrated. It's like, but you just said, but you're listening, right? And they're saying, not exactly. It's like I'm just kind of confused when it comes to this. And then they'll start to go down another track. And then you'll say, well, okay, so let me make sure I understand. Once you understand this and this and that, and so like now you're asking that question, and then you come back, and then they're like, well, not exactly. And then what's really cool, if you really work this really hard, like, and it may seem repetitive, it may seem boring, it may seem like what's going on, but if you kind of go back and forth with them, usually the first thing they say isn't really the rejection. You'll get deeper and deeper and deeper, and you'll come to find out, the real issue is, like I said, like, their great grandfather, was a horrible individual, and they wanted them to be burning in hell. So now that they're not burning in hell, they're upset because they're sleeping. And no one's gonna come out and say that first, right? No one's gonna come straight out the woodworks. Some may. I'm not. Some people are bold and they're angry and they're frustrated. But some people, they just have it hidden deep down inside, and so they want to work through it to try to prove that this isn't real. Or they want to take time to work through it to try to figure out something different. So by restating it to them, you're allowing the situation to go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And then number 4, summarize what they know and are comfortable with. And when it comes to summarizing what they know and what they're comfortable with, think about it. Think about it in the context of. Oh, did I skip number 3?
Yes.
Oh, I thought I talked about number 3, but I didn't. I didn't even refer to it. Get a commitment, and that if the objection could be removed, he or she would decide immediately, right? So if the objection could be removed, so they're saying, and that's kind of what I was saying before when they say like, oh, I just need to get a little bit more information to understand. And so you restate. So let me make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying if you get a little bit more information, understanding on this topic, you'll be, a lot more comfortable to run with it. And so what you're doing is you're restating what they're saying, and you're saying if you get that, if the objection is removed and you understand clearly, then you'll be able to go through with it, right? And so when you say that, well, all of a sudden you're doing is you're putting them in the hot seat where it's like that's the reason why you don't want to do it. And then they're like, no, not exactly. I'm just not comfortable with and they'll do another explanation. Then you come and say, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. If this and this take place and this obstacle is removed, then you'll feel comfortable moving forward with it, right? And then they'll be like, okay, not exactly. And then that's when you get deeper and deeper into the reasoning behind what's going on. And so when you take time to not only restate, but also restate with the obstacle or the objection being removed out of the way, and saying like, and then you'll be able to like commit to it or walk in it. And some people may say, but isn't that aggressive? No, you're just saying what they're saying. That's all you're doing. Is saying what is saying what they're saying. They're saying this, and you're saying, let me make sure I understand. You're saying this, right? And they may say no, and then they may get frustrated, right? They may get like a little frustrated. But this is when the next part kind of comes in here. But summarize what they know and what they're comfortable with, and simply by taking time to back up and say, okay, do you understand the Bible saying? Was the Bible study clear? Were you able to understand everything that was going on? And they may say, yeah, I was able to understand and I could see. Is there anything, a part of this Bible study that you're comfortable with? Simply by saying, is there anything that you're comfortable with? Anything that you enjoyed? Anything that you really liked? All of a sudden, you're taking those negative emotions that they may be having, those frustrated emotions, and you're bringing some good emotions in. and saying, I really liked how it talked about, the Sabbath. I just never saw it in that light. Or I really never knew that the Bible had so many texts that talked about people sleeping. Like, it's actually kind of cool, right? And so they may say something that they really liked. I like the way you started the Bible study. I like the way you ended the Bible study. I like this part of the Bible study. But they'll say something about what they liked or something that they enjoyed or something that they're comfortable with. And then you can dive into the final F's. Diving into the final F's, and this is really where you would kind of close up, because you don't want to push anybody. You don't want anybody to get frustrated or upset. You just want to challenge people and encourage them and say, like, hey, look, this is what you said. I'm just restating it. After that, you back up and you say, okay, is there anything that you liked, anything that you're comfortable with, anything that worked for you? And then now you're diving into the final F's. And the first one is feel. I just used Mr. Jones. I don't know if there's a Mr. Jones out there, but we're just going to use Mr. Jones, right? The first F is stating how they feel. And simply by saying, Mr. Jones, I can imagine how you feel, right? Like, and they already shared a few things with you, a few objections with you. I can imagine how you feel, whether that's, afraid, nervous, scared, unclear, many questions, right? I understand how you, I can imagine how you feel. I wouldn't say I understand how you feel unless you've been there in that specific place before with a certain doctrine. But just simply saying, I can imagine how you feel or how nervous it can be. Then you move to the felt, right? And this is dealing with others. It's saying many others in your present situation have felt the same exact way. Just saying that, it kind of brings what we talked about yesterday, this aspect of inclusion, like they're not alone, like there's other people that have experienced this as well. You're not the only one that has experienced stuff like this. And then C is found, simply by saying, Mr. Jones, they have found, and this is where you insert one of the benefits that we talked about yesterday, right? This is where it's like, hey, but I just want to let you know, people that have gone down this direction, they found peace. People that have gone down this direction, they found happiness. People that have gone down this direction have found joy. People that have gone down this direction have found freedom from guilt, from shame. People that have gone down this road, like people they have found what they were looking for, right? Or what they didn't even realize they were looking for. They found it. And that's when you give them that encouragement. And the last one is no fear. And that's just like my initial phrase. I say no fear. It's a step-by-step process. Like when you say that, like what you're doing is you're doing this invitation. This invitation where you just said, like, I just want to let you know people have found peace. They found joy going down this road. But no fear, this is a step-by-step process.
Can I ask a question? How do you deal, I would assume that most of the people that you study with are Sunday camper type people. And the whole world pretty much keeps Sunday. And so when they start learning about the Sabbath and stuff, I'm sure it's confusing. Well, all the world can't be wrong. How do you deal with that? And the other one is, it is so common, like Rush Limbaugh. I don't know if you know who Rush Limbaugh, he passed away recently. And of course on the program, we know he's up in heaven now. This is such a common belief that once they die, they're all going to heaven and stuff. And so, that's not the case. And so, the majority of the world believes that. So, how do they deal with that and say, well, this is what most of the world believes. So
Yeah.
what do you say?
Well, definitely with that, a lot of it is done in the study, in the actual study itself. Like when you go through one of those Bible study guides, at least the one I use when I go through the Sabbath, it points out a lot of how, like for example, the verse that says narrow is the way, right? Like very few find it. When you go through all these verses pointing out the Sabbath and how Jesus kept the Sabbath, how the disciples after kept the Sabbath, and when you're running through a lot of verses, it begins to click in people's mind and mind you, even before this is because this is all step by step, right? Because a lot of the reason why people have kind of pushed the Sabbath to the side is because they push the Ten Commandments to the side. So the first study that you do with somebody is not going to be the Sabbath. The first study you're going to do, oh, not the first study, but you're going to do the Ten Commandments first, or not first in the study, but you're going to do it before the Sabbath, right? And so people are going to understand, like, oh, so this Ten Commandments stand strong, right? And so when you go to the Sabbath, they already have that foundation of the Ten Commandments wasn't done away with or removed or discounted. So when you go talk about the Sabbath, that's the fourth one, right? And so you can walk through them in that aspect. So a lot of it's done kind of step by step. You're building on blocks. And then when you get to the Sabbath, it is tough because the Sabbath is one of the doctrines that causes the most life change. A lot of it is like, in your head change where what you're looking towards, right? You're changing your ideas with state of the dead. You're changing your ideas with second coming. You're changing your ideas when it comes to hell. You're changing your ideas when it comes to, a lot of it is just ideas, right? Because it's just, it's truth. So it brings some clarity to life and the way you live. But Sabbath deals a lot with lifestyle. So it's like work on the Sabbath, resting on the Sabbath, doing good on the Sabbath. Like all these concepts, like my job won't let me do it. So now there's a little bit of a wrestle and tussle. So the Sabbath is a challenge one, but I also encourage people to use it as a step by step. So I encourage people to take minute steps, right? Whether that is, I encourage you to come to church with us this Sabbath, celebrate your first Sabbath. Something like that will give them the little stepping stone where it's all like, well, I guess I might be able to make it the Sabbath, or invite them over for your house for, Friday night worship. It's like, let's open the Sabbath together. Hopefully they won't be working, at nighttime, but if they're available either Friday night or Saturday morning, invite them out and go over, so have a nice little like vespers. But sorry, but dealing with the Sabbath is probably going to be the biggest kind of. I mean, all of them are kind of tough, but the Sabbath is the more life change. And sometimes you'll find that people are already keeping the Sabbath because they've already done a little bit of research, right? So they're already keeping the Sabbath. Sometimes you'll find that when people run across that Bible study, they're excited to keep the Sabbath and be like, "Yo, I'm about to quit everything and do this," right? It all depends on the person and all depends on the situation.
And this part where you said, "Don't," it's a step-by-step process.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other topics that are going to address the Sabbath and give them a chance to make another decision.
Exactly.
And they get to the mark of the beast. The whole world wanders after the beast.
Yeah, and that's
but you don't want to say that now. You want to just say, let's keep that. Let's keep seeing what the Bible says.
And so exactly what he said. I encourage always at the end, no matter what study you're doing, and I encourage this because again, all these what you just mentioned, they're building blocks on top of each other. So when you go in, and they come to that point and they said, I can't, I would, but this reasoning, and you kind of work through it a little bit. When you get to that end, it's just encourage them. Say like, no worries, no fear. It's a step-by-step process. Simple as that. And when you come to that point, just be like, is there anything I can pray for before we end? That's it. And like it's not the end of a Bible study because they didn't 100% agree with it. It's not the end of y'all's relationship because they didn't, agree with it. It just means that they're not extremely ready to take that step, but they'll be ready down the road. But like I would always, for the Sabbath, at least encourage them to come out for a Vespers at church. You always gotta kind of throw that out there. I invite you to come out to church. I invite you to come out to Vespers. So then the follow-up. And this is big because you really don't want to leave people hanging. You want to do your best not to leave people hanging. People can feel it when they're left hanging. And when I say that, I'm just saying like no follow-up and no response. Think about it this way, right? Say that I just had a question when it came to the law, when Jesus says, I did not come to destroy the law, but I came to fulfill it. And I was just like, you know, what does Jesus mean when he says fulfill? And let's say I didn't know the answer to that, and I said, hey, we're gonna dive into that next week, at the beginning of our Bible study. And then you come into the Bible study and you just blow past the question like they asked last week. In their heads, they may have been looking forward to that moment, and then all of a sudden you came in, said, hey, how's it going? You did talk to them, checked in on them, and said, hey, let's jump into the Bible study. And you just jump in, you start reading, you start going through the Bible study. They may not have wanted to just push that on you. They may be thinking in their heads, did they remember? Are they, did they forget? Do they care about me? Do they just have a lot of Bible studies going on? And so what happens is people can feel being left hanging with questions, also with rejections, right? If those things that have been, on their mind, things that they've been dealing with, just being able to ask about it, just to be able to go in there and say like, hey, how did the thing go? With looking up more information on State of the Dead. Have you had a chance to do that? And so what you're doing is you're following up with all the stuff that has already taken place and checking in. And so that can also be during the week, right? During the week, and I kind of mentioned that earlier before, but say you guys had a question going over second coming, being able to shoot them some verses and saying, hey, check out these verses and tell me what you think. Because the idea is when you guys come back together, you guys are going to do this little study for 15 minutes. You want to make sure that they're doing a little bit of studying too, right? So when you shoot them a little message, it's like, oh yeah, I should be studying this, right? I should be looking this up, or I should be, and it also shows them that like this person actually really wants to study. Like it's not just we talk about studying, but we're actually doing it. And so when you're going through Bible studies, when you're on this journey, on this path, following up is really big, because following up shows a deep interest, right? I always like to use the example of when people start dating, right? When people start dating, or not when they start dating, but when they start talking, I guess the talking phase, right? When they're interested in each other, they're trying to maybe go down that road. Us guys, we're the king of follow-up at that time, right? Like we're checking in. We're like, hey, how's it going? Hey, did you get home safe? Hey, how's it going? Right? Like we're checking in. Like, hey, had a really after the time we spent together, had a really good time with you. Just wanted to let you know it's awesome. You cool people. Like we follow up when we're interested, right? And so when you're doing a Bible study, it's kind of the same in that aspect, right? It's the same where like when you follow up, you show the other person that you actually care and that you're actually interested and you're actually thinking about them and you're actually, interested in looking forward to what's coming up next. Especially when they're not connected to the church. Because that means you have absolutely no contact with them, right? Until the next Bible study. They're not popping up at prayer meeting. They're not popping up at church. You're just cold turkey running in for the next week and then you're seeing them again. And so definitely follow-up is key to whether it's questions, whether it's rejections or things that that are popping up. You want to make sure you follow up on as many things as you can. I mean, don't kill yourself, don't go crazy. Just a few things here and there is enough to keep that Bible study relationship going. And even if you want to keep a little notepad in your Bible of just some things that pop up during the study, stopping and saying, hey, I like that. I like that you brought that up because that is a really, I was gonna say good question, but that is a really good thought, right? You try to figure out, but you write it down on a piece of paper and then okay, this is gonna be what we're gonna study, and then you close it, right? Or they mention something and you're like, oh, I'm gonna follow up on that. That's a good question. Lord help me, right? You can tell I'm eager to do studies with somebody that's not connected to the church, because that's gonna push me a lot more. I'm actually doing some studies with somebody who's not connected to the church. I just thought about that. See, I gotta follow up. Struggles. Pray for your pastor. But anyways, the last things to remember, and I'm going to continue to say this because I want this to be drilled in all our minds, that we will make mistakes. It's going to happen, right? But Psalms chapter 37, verses 24, come on now. Psalms chapter 37, verses 24. it tells us that God's going to hold us up. And we're going to fall. We're going to experience some things. It's going to be tough. We're going to be like, man, I totally did not go through any of those final Fs. I didn't do what I thought I should have done. And it might have been just like a lot of adrenaline rushing and I forgot everything. But God is going to hold you up in the midst of all of that. As long as you're doing your best and putting forth your effort, God is going to hold you through all of that. God is going to make it work through all of that. And so you will make mistakes, but know that the God is greater than your mistakes. He's going to bring something about out of it. So trust in him through the process. You're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. But not only that, it's going to be fun. Amen. It's going to be fun. God is going to exceed all that you could ever imagine, right? All that you could ask or think, God is going to go way above and beyond that. And so it's going to be fun. It's going to be enjoyable when you do end up bringing somebody to decisions and interacting with those questions and building the relationship off those questions and working through the objections or the rejections and doing the follow-up. God's going to bless through all of that. And so when we're thinking about that, we can know that this is going to be fun. I can sit back and enjoy this whole process of Bible study. Because again, you're going to go through this each week that you interact with them. Not only that, but God will bless you, and then God will bless them. God's word doesn't come back to him void. It's going to make an imprint on your heart. It's going to make an imprint on their heart. You will be blessed, and they will be blessed as well. I think some of the times where I've grown the most has been through rejections and objections, because I've been challenged like to try to do my best to step up to that, or through the questions, because I've been challenged to do some research and look some stuff up. When I was doing Bible studies at the beginning of this year with Michael Gerstner, we did Bible studies. I think we're doing 2 a week. We're doing 2 Bible studies a week, and it was amazing because the man would ask questions, and I was like, man, dude, you hit me with the questions, man. I love it. And so I would, write them down, and we'd study some things together. And so, like I said, it's just a lot of fun, and it's super enjoyable. And he still reaches out and asks questions, right? And I love the being able to grow through the process. And so I'm just encouraging you that when you go through this, whether it's questions, rejections, doing some follow-up, all of it, we're going to be blessed by it just as much as they are. And they are going to be blessed by it just as much as we are, right? God is going to bless everyone through this process, because when God's word goes out, it doesn't come back to him void. God does and accomplishes what he needs to accomplish with his word. So with that being said, we're about 6 minutes over, forgive me. But we're going to close with the word of prayer. I'm going to leave these up here. If you want to look at them, feel free to look at them. Please don't take them, because especially these, there's none that I'm gonna have to get some weird copies, from printouts or something. But anyways, but you feel free to take pictures, check them out, and yes, leave them there. So let's bow our heads with the word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I just want to thank you so much for this time, for this opportunity that we've had to be able to study your word through a seminar of how to get Bible studies. And as we kind of went through these questions, rejections, follow-up, Father God, I just want to pray that you may help us to be encouraged that rejection happens. I think of the rich young ruler who walked away, and it's tough sometimes, but the beautiful part is we get to be with people on their journey through this process. We get to work with people as they step by step make the decision to follow you. And God, during this time, I pray that you may continue to encourage us and get us excited for this opportunity to learn how to give Bible studies, to be able to give them. May you impress our mind with maybe people we can give studies to, or get us excited to just maybe do a cold turkey Bible study, no matter what it may be, God. I pray that you may lead us on this journey, lead us through this process, that we may be able to grow in you as our prayer. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Again, tomorrow is going to be 5:30. So I just want to make sure I clarify, just in case some people show up at 6:30. It's going to be at 5:30, 5:30 to 6:30. And if you have any questions, make sure to bring them tomorrow.